There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I've got to beat every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up using a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. God Hand is the logical next step for a beat-em-up in a 3D environment. It was released by Clover Studios in 2006 and then 2007 for PAL, but sadly didn't have much success. Originally, a more serious tone was intended, but after an E3 trailer made to be humorous received positive reception, they shifted the entire game to match it. Can I overcome this notoriously difficult game? Thank you so much Zooming Zorark, who donated the entirety of this game, and after I was done I sent it back to him. I'm really glad to have played this game, so I really do appreciate it. Right off the bat, I picked normal difficulty, and the game just throws me right in. The very first cutscene shows me, Jean, the main character, and Olivia talking as we enter this western-type town. We talk for a moment, and then I go fight. And that's what I do for a while. I fight and look at the controls and check things out. This is a very non-handholdy game, and I just have to throw myself into it and pay attention. In the menus, I check out all the combos and buttons I can press, and you can press square a bunch of times for some combos, and you have X and triangle. You can also press down X, triangle, and square to get other moves, situational moves that maybe break enemies' guards and trip them, knock them up in the air, knock them away. And there's like 100 moves that you can eventually get because every time you go to a shop, you can buy more moves and you can put them anywhere you want. Each of the moves comes with a different damage number, amount of times hit, where you're going to hit the enemy, how your character does the attack, which is pretty cool. And you can check out how these moves work in real time in a practice arena once you get to the shop area. So you get to test all this stuff out and see what you like best. I'm here in this first area for a while as I die a few times. This game is pretty difficult, but I slowly learn the different actions that my character can take, all the different abilities I have, and how important paying attention during combat is, because you can see what enemies are going to do and you can react accordingly, which is really nice. This game, like I said, is difficult, and the difficulty comes from a well-crafted, complex fighting system. It isn't necessarily as complex as a game like Street Fighter, where you have to use your left analog stick and do like some half circles and be at a certain distance from like Mortal Kombat. No. The depth actually comes from all of the things the enemy can do, because you need to learn from each specific enemy how to deal with each of those things. Something like an enemy throwing a block up. If they begin blocking, you need to use a guard break. If you don't and you continue to smack them, they will put you into a stun state and deal tons of damage. You have all these normal fighting moves, but you also have two special type moves. The first is the roulette wheel. You have only a few seconds to cycle through a list of moves and pick one. Not only do you have a timer to pick in the roulette wheel, but enemies can still attack you. Time is slowed on the outside while you're selecting the ability, but if you're hit while you're in there, it will cancel out and you'll take a bunch of damage. Each of the abilities in the roulette wheel do a different thing. You can do a one-on-one attack, you can do a juggling attack, you can do an attack that hits multiple people, and it will tell you the damage number, so you can see how strong one of these moves is. There are a couple moves like the ball buster, which puts only male enemies into a stun state where you can then combo off on, and a few more that have a few interesting effects. The only way to use it though is to pick up these cards around the arena by breaking boxes and barrels, and you can get orbs, and you can spend those orbs on different abilities. Most of them cost 1, some of them cost 2, and 1 costs 3, and the higher the orb cost, the more damage it will do. The other ability is your God Hand ability, the titular ability of this game, which is a little sad in my opinion. See, you press the button, you press R2, and you are invincible, and that's it. I mean, of course you move faster and attack stronger, but you're invincible. That's all you need. It's a one push button win all, and it's only about 15 seconds long. You can extend it a little bit as you upgrade your character at the shop, but it's never enough to really make a difference. It's just invincible for 15 seconds, and then when it's done, well, it's done. You can get the meter back up by kicking the shit out of people or finding a porn magazine on the ground. And I really was hoping that maybe there'd be some kind of cool duality where if you can activate the God Hand and do more damage but take more damage, while your human side is more healthy but does less damage. I don't know, something that would have been kind of this cool influx state fighting move thing, but it's not. It's just press R2, become invincible, and while it's not bad, I wish it was a little bit more interesting. As I've been talking about these abilities, I've been playing video of me just fighting tons of enemies. That is most of what you do in this game, and it's really fun. The variety of both enemy type and move type from each enemy is very, very high. It's a lot, and that is fantastic. It really makes the game feel fleshed out when you have so much to do with one system, the combat system. system. On top of learning all the things enemies do and the things that you can do, you do have a dodge button, the right analog stick. Depending on which direction you press it, it will dodge in a different direction. If you press down, you will do a backflip with lots of iframes. If you press left or right, you'll slide left and right and have some iframes along with it. And if you press up, you will dodge on the spot. And that has a few iframes, but is spammable. It's probably the most popular one to do when you're trying to just dodge, and you're a casual player especially. Just jam up on the right analog stick and you'll dodge a decent amount of attacks. Dodging doesn't just get you out of the way of attacks though. It will help you raise your God Hand meter a lot quicker because you're doing better in combat, which is great. But now that you're doing better in combat, you're also going to raise that dynamic difficulty meter, which goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to die. As the difficulty meter increases, enemies get stronger, faster, and will attack you in larger numbers. You gotta be careful because the better you do, the harder the game gets. If you're a casual player, you'll find yourself stuck on level 1 and 2 more often, and you'll be able to get through the game just fine. You're never gonna be forced into those higher difficulty levels. But if you get good at the game and you wanna continue, you'll find yourself getting attacked by tons of enemies who are very strong at levels 3 and die. And at die, you are dead, man. You've gotta be very good at the game. So the dynamic difficulty feels a little bit more like it's for people on a second playthrough or playing on the harder difficulty. I never really saw very many levels above 2. Honestly, I fought a lot of 1 and 2 type fights and it was fine. It worked great for me. But once I got to 3, I could tell I was really struggling. And it's cool though, because again, if you're not good at the game, you'll always stay in the lower categories, meaning you'll still be able to make it through the game. It's not impossible. It's just harder. All right, finally back to gameplay. As I move forward and beat some dudes and a demon that appears from some of these dudes, I find out that people are getting their arms cut off because these demons are looking for someone with the God Hand. Well, it's me. I have the God Hand. Although we do get to see a scene where I originally get my arm chopped off. That's where I got the God Hand from though. However, it looks kind of suspicious because, I mean, how can they not tell who has the God Hand? Wouldn't they be fighting them? It's not just some random person running around. I guess these demons just don't give a shit. After fighting around town a little more, over a bridge and fighting some big dudes, we find the 4 main antagonists of the game. We have Belze in the purple suit, we have Elvis, who looks like a big Elvis, we have Shannon, and Azel, who is the other person who owns the God Hand, because there are two God Hands. One person a long time ago had the power of the gods in both of his hands. He took one, I got the other. At this point, the only thing we understand is that these 4 want to resurrect the demon king Angra, who's going to take over the world from humans. Even though the person with the God Hand on the bad side is a human, I don't know what he thinks is going to happen. Shortly after this, I have my first real boss fight against these 2 very flamboyant men who are working for Elvis, as Elvis is the first demon who's coming after us. We fight a big group of guys in a room with some boxes. The boxes do drop things like fruit for health, and they drop money, they drop orbs for the roulette wheel, and they even drop God Hand magazines so that you can raise your God Hand meter. These guys aren't too tough. It just takes a few tries for me to start to understand what they need me to do, and most of that is hitting them and getting out of the way of their attacks. I mean, that's mostly what the game is. Although I do need to use the God Hand in my roulette wheel right, otherwise I just won't do enough damage. After I destroy them, I traipse around Elvis's mansion for a little while, taking care of his staff apparently, and then when I get to him, he puts up a pretty good fight. He's big, he can't be juggled in the air very easily, he does a lot of blocking, and he does a lot of area of effect attacks. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Smo from Dark Souls. I don't know why, maybe it's just because of his size and the fact that he jumps up in the air and slams down on the ground. But I did a lot of dodging, and after a couple times losing, I do end up beating him. And I kick him through the floor into a statue, and he just walks out of it. I'm really not sure what happened there. I send Elvis packing, and him and the demons talk about who's coming to get me next. And really, they just do this over and over. They decide who's gonna come get me, and then someone tries to stop me, and they can't do it because I'm just too powerful. On the flip side of this, whenever I come back to Olivia, she just tells me to go do more stuff. Apparently, I just need to go help people over and over and over while the demons attack me, and eventually I'll find a way to stop Angra being resurrected. I don't know, I'm not really sure exactly where we're going or what we're doing. Okay, so I go off and do what Olivia wants me to do, and first I start by fighting through some burning city streets. There's tons of new dudes, I've got to learn a bunch of new stuff, I fight some demons, and eventually I get to this big piece of machinery that when it smashes down on the ground, I just punch and kick it to death. Eventually I make it to a cutscene that shows a little bit more of when I lost my arm originally. It was because they were trying to cut off Olivia's arm first. We come in, stop them, they don't like it, and they try and chop my arm off. That cutscene sets us up to see the guys who originally chopped our arm off, including a woman with a whip. We must fight all 3 of them at the same time. And yes, this is difficult because when they all attack you, you can just get destroyed, man. They do so much damage. They can stop you from attacking, so it stops you from combos. However, you do have some options. The first thing is you only fight 2 of them at once. Eventually, the 3rd one jumps in, so you can get a little bit of damage off. This is when you might want to use your God Hand or your roulette wheel to take care of one of them, so you can bring it down to 2, which is a much more manageable number than 3. I took care of the big guy first because he can run around the arena, and while you can lead him into the other teammates, you can also get knocked off your ass very easily and get comboed to death. So I took care of him first, and then I found a new move called Mule Kick, which helps you launch enemies up into the air. These are bosses, so you can't really get them high enough in the air to do some special moves, like an uppercut or a kick, but you can knock them up with the Mule Kick, and when they hit the ground, press circle, which is a context-sensitive button. You can then stomp on their heads, and you can do this indefinitely. Just stomp on their heads until they roll out of it, stop stomping on them, Mule Kick immediately, stomp on them again. When they roll out, Mule Kick them, stomp on them. You can do this over and over until you kill them. I head out into the nighttime city until I finally reach Elvis, which really only takes about 15 or 20 minutes. That's right, we're back into another boss fight. This game is a very heavy mix of boss fights and regular fights, which is pretty good. The boss fights are all well made and interesting to do, as well as the normal fights are complex and take a while to understand. This game has a really good mix of those two things. Speaking of, Elvis is pretty similar to the first time you fought him, with a couple new moves, like a bull rush that he does instantly. He does a lot more fire attacks with his cigar. He is much stronger and does take me a lot longer to beat this time, mostly because he's just really tough. If you miss a couple dodges, he will destroy your ass. After I kick his ass, Elvis goes back and they decide that it's Shannon's turn to fight me, so now I must go fight Shannon. And the reason I go to fight Shannon is because Olivia asks me to help the people that she is enslaving, even though I'm not really sure where they are or what's going on. She says, go save them, please. And my guy's like, oh, I don't really want to. That's just too much. I'm doing all the dirty work. And so she threatens to cut off the God Hand and take it back. Of course, Gene runs out the door and goes to do what she wants him to do. But this is just a very interesting way of progressing the game forward. The demons want to fight you. Olivia wants you to just go fight, so you just go fight. These next few areas take place in a circus type level, but then they also progress to other types of levels, and it almost feels like they are disjointed. I really wish that it felt more thematic going through the game. It feels like I'm going to these areas for a real purpose. But right now, I'm just fighting and fighting and fighting and doing some more fighting and eventually getting somewhere else to do more fighting, which is okay. The gameplay really is great and I love it, but I do wish they had put a little more effort into making it feel more thematic. The game keeps us on our toes though, which is perfect. This is what I like. Yes, it's nice to have learned how to fight the enemies from before, but now we have new enemies and we get to learn new tactics to fight them. At this point, I'm getting a little better at dodging and attacking at the right times, but it's still very difficult to figure out what I need to do and when, because there, like I said, are so many moves I can use, and I'm sort of antsy. I'm a very aggressive player, so sometimes I go in, swing in without a care in the world. So you'll see that often, but we do get to fight some cool boss type enemies. The first boss we fight is a guy stuck in a gorilla suit. I'm not sure if he's a gorilla or a guy in a gorilla suit, but we fight him. After only a few more fights, we find ourselves in this underground cavern, fighting 5 of the Super Sentai Power Ranger type dudes who are like these little, I don't know, they're small. I'm not sure exactly what they are. They're like gnomes, goblins, something like that. They're just these little dudes who run around acting like Power Ranger type enemies, and they have all the suits of cards: diamonds, hearts, clubs, spades, and then the middle one, the red one, is Joker. And they all have these cute little sayings, and they are hard. You have to fight all 5 at the same time. And yes, it's a difficult fight. However, I learned very quickly that if you use Mule Kick, they just lose to it. So I Mule Kick their dumbasses into oblivion and pass this fight the first time. After this, I go through a couple more underground areas with a lot of big dudes who just destroy my ass a few times, until I reach Shannon in her little circus tent area. She is a tough boss, mostly because I'm just having problems paying attention to her tells. Once I do, I destroy her. But man, it's just forever before I finally stop being so aggressive that I pay attention to what she does with this big heart wand thing. See, she can turn you into a dog and kick you, she can hit you, she does a series of attacks and explosions with her magic, and if you don't pay attention, she'll just beat your ass. She also has this very alluring trap in the middle of the circus tent. This big barred off area has what looks like a lot of pickups, things that could really help you in the fight. However, the second you go in there and start picking stuff up, the doors close and you must fight other enemies on top of it. So it's really not worth it to go into that area. You need to just get good at fighting her and then beat her outside of the bars. Shannon sulks off back to the other demons, and we go back to Olivia ourselves. When we tell her that we're going back out, she says, hey, you should destroy this mobile fortress for me. That's it. You just go destroy a mobile fortress. So that's what we go do. We go to this enormous mobile fortress with a lot of new enemy types, some women with whips, some androids, and then shortly after we start it, we get to fight the Three Stooges yet again. They are more difficult, yes, but they're still the same fight. I find that if I take out the big guy first, it's a little bit easier because he stops charging around the fucking match, and the woman with the whip is just so strong from so far away, and she constantly interrupts my combos. After this, I push on through this mobile fortress, where I find more women who destroy me by kicking me to death. I find some more androids. I fight some crushers that come down from the ceiling, until eventually I make it across a bridge, where we again see the three demons we've been fighting for boss fights. But it's not us they fight this time. No, it's Azel, the other dude with the god hand, who is calling it the demon hand. He instantly kills them, making me feel like he's way stronger than he really is, because soon after, we fight him in a small arena. Now, in this fight, we don't have to kill him. In fact, he's just judging our technique and our abilities and our strength. But we do kick his ass a bit. It is hard. This is like one of the harder boss fights to fight, because he does exactly what you do. He can use the god hand abilities. He has strong abilities he can use. He dodges just like you, which other enemies don't. So it's a tough fight. You need to use the things around the arena and hope that you get some really good pickups, and you need to learn when to use the abilities to stop him. Now, my favorite abilities are doing mule kicks to kick him up in the air and then trying to stomp on him. Honestly, it's the best way to do it. Mule kick, stomp, mule kick, stomp. If you can't get a stomp off, mule kick and then do a heel drop. If you do a heel drop and then do another heel drop immediately, sometimes they know you're going to do the first one, so they roll away from it and stand up. But sometimes the game lets you do another heel drop, something that is only supposed to be done when an enemy is on the ground. If you do a second one, your character tracks him and will do it as they stand up, allowing you to actually hit them with the second heel drop, making them bounce up in the air. You can complete this over and over and over and kind of cheese your way through the fight. At the end of the fight, this guy casually drops that Olivia is his fiance, and I guess, sure, that's interesting. The mobile fortress still hasn't been destroyed though. No, we need to continue on until we find an android boss who is able to transform his arms and body into different weapons. Well, I actually take him out pretty easily. The trick for this guy was to dodge left and right as he's about to attack, and then hit square about 3 times, and then dodge left or right again. Just square 3 times, dodge left, square 3 times, dodge left. He always has a good cadence for this kind of rhythm, and you can get around a lot of his attacks by doing this and kill him pretty quickly. After I destroy that bucket of bolts, I see the demons again talking. They're upset that Azel didn't kill me. Of course, he's a dirty human and is no good, so they send Elvis this time, and he is going to be in his true demon form, which means that these human-looking forms are not their true forms. I wonder what's going to happen. On the flip side, we head back to Olivia and explain to her that we found out that she was Devil Hand's fiance, which okay, all right, that's fine. But she does tell us a bunch of story that's helpful in understanding what the fuck is going on. See, she is part of a clan of people who are protecting the god hands for the next time that Angra is resurrected. While they're doing this, Azel is part of this clan. He goes crazy, takes one of the arms, and is like, I'm gonna be a devil. And so she takes the other arm. He kills everyone in the clan. She runs with the god hand and tries to find someone to help her. But that's about it. So these people were watching over the god hands and eventually got killed by Azel, and now the god hands are out of control and they're trying to figure out how to stop the resurrection of Angra, just the two of us. She says the next place we need to go is to a floating bazaar, which really looks a lot like an Italian city, and we go through this for quite a while. This next sequence is quite a bit longer than the other ones. Generally, we do a couple areas and then we fight a boss. However, this time we start in the city and we fight our way through a bunch of new enemies, which are admittedly becoming quite difficult to deal with. I am getting a bunch of new moves. In fact, some of the new moves I get are old moves leveled up. I have like a left jab 1, now I have a left jab 2, and then there's a left jab 3. The more damage they do, of course, the better. You're going to be able to kill them quicker with your combos. So I go back to the shops to buy a bunch of these and equip myself, and now I'm dealing a decent amount of damage. But that's on top of learning all of the new abilities and moves that characters do, because I'll tell you what, they're becoming faster and they're attacking in larger groups. And you'll see that I fight a lot of demons. Some of these guys transform into demons when I kill them, and they're just random assortment of demons with different abilities, but they transform into them a lot more often now. Eventually I find my way onto a boat where I fight on the boat, then I fight with a cannon on the boat to shoot other boats. Sometimes there's flying saucers. That was fun, I guess. It was a really weird little minigame. And then eventually we fight more people on the boat as they storm it. And then a rock star with a guitar comes onto the boat and fights us. I don't know who the fuck he is, but apparently he sold his soul to the devils for some power or something. I'm not sure. But he tries to kick our ass. He's not very strong though, so I kick his ass instead. I get off the boat and go about 20 more minutes through the city, fighting new enemies and finding pickups all over the place until we find the rock star yet again. But this time he's got a dude with drums and cymbals attached to his whole body. We must fight both of them. However, they aren't the real boss. See, there's one more rock star, and he seems like the lead guitar. I think this other guy was the rhythm guitarist. So you kill these two guys, and the other guy comes in. He's really not that hard either. He's pretty easy. And once you kill him, finally you can move on. More cityscapes await me as I try and get closer and closer to Elvis to fight him in his real demon form. While I'm fighting, I also have to punch this big ball that's rolling around, and it rolls over these electrified areas. Obviously, I need to get to the unelectrified areas so that I don't get zapped. Once I push it into this small depression on the ground, I go through these doors and I find Elvis himself. This is the first big demon fight where you fight an enormous demon that fights a lot different than the more human type enemies, even the more human version of Elvis. I found that doing the dodge left and right and attacking a few times thing was really helpful because they usually attack through your attacks. You don't always know when they're going to, and yes, you can learn their tells, but because they're so big and you have so many iframes, if you just smack square a couple times and dodge left or right and do it again and do it again and do it again, you can usually get a decent amount of damage before you're hit. And there are things around the level to heal your health if you can find them. You also get your God Hand meter up every so often. You can take him out with a couple roulette wheel orbs. He's not terribly difficult, but it is starting to get to the point where if you haven't learned the basics of the game enough, you aren't going to be able to progress. This is a difficult fight in general, but once you learn how to dodge his attacks and attack a few times, he really isn't too bad. The demons are pissed that I killed Elvis. Shannon decides she's gonna turn into a demon to kill me. Anyway, the next areas are a bunch of underground areas that are starting to get pretty ridiculously hard. Lots of enemies, lots of difficult to dodge attacks that take a lot of your health, attacks that knock your ass out, and yes, there are cliffs to kick enemies off of to make this easier, especially if you get lucky and knock a bunch of them up in the air. You can kick them off the side and they die immediately. But it's not that simple, not when you're getting attacked by so many enemies from so many directions. Plus, don't forget, if you kill someone, they might turn into a demon. I finally find myself facing the 5 Super Sentai Power Ranger dudes again, where Gene proceeds to make fun of the Joker one by mimicking him.
Shuffle up and deal! I've got a killer hand!
I've got a killer hand!
You're gonna get it! You're gonna get it!
This is dumb.
After I'm done making fun of him, I find the best way to fight them is to get them all on top of each other and then mule kick them over and over and over. Those poor little dudes can't handle it. And this time, they're dying. They don't get away. I kill them. The next areas are even more difficult with larger enemies rather than multiple small ones. Some of the large ones are women with axes that will not stop attacking. It's like some kind of Dark Souls enemy. You never know when to go in and fight them. You just gotta back off until they finally stop their assault on you. And eventually I do get to another boss, and he's not in the correct game. Even Gene says something about this. He's like a little sorcerer who flies up on stones and throws them at you in the arena. He does eventually come down, and when he does, he runs away from you. He never directly fights you. Sometimes enemies enter the arena to help him, but most of the time I just run around in circles around the arena until he falls down, and then I go over and kick his ass until he goes back up in the air, where I can't hit him. Then I run around in circles until he comes down, and then I kick his ass a bit more. I make my way slowly out of the underground, up a tower to find Shannon herself, who turns into a demon. This demon looks very much like a Dark Souls enemy again. And honestly, Dark Souls came out after this, so Dark Souls has got some explaining to do here. Anyway, Shannon fight is not too bad. There's a lot around the arena to help you, and I got a lot of lucky drops like roulette orbs that help me take huge chunks out of her life. Again, with the demons, it's a lot easier to just hit square a few times and dodge left or right. Getting behind them to deal damage damage and just always dodging enough to get out of the way of their attacks. After this, Olivia gets captured by Azel, and we go into the desert looking for her. Apparently, we're going towards the tower where Angra is going to be resurrected. I'm not sure, it doesn't actually say that's where we're going, but that is where we're heading. I don't even know why the tower is there or why that's specifically the place to resurrect him. Some of these things are left just open with nothing. I mean, there's very little story in this game technically. A lot of it's just what's happening right now. So we head in the desert, we fight the android again, kind of randomly. I fight a bunch of enemies in this tower after breaking things in the desert to get ported up to it. And after I kill all of those enemies, which is pretty difficult, it's grueling because they have you fight quite a few dudes, I meet a master swordsman, and I thought he was going to be a little bit more difficult, but I kick his ass. After this, I get to one of the most difficult areas in the game for me, and this is because it's a large area with a lot to explore. You need to find 3 keys total to open the door to fight Belze, but enemies are everywhere. They're in large groups, in varied groups, and every so often, as you're walking around, suddenly enemies will appear and chase you down relentlessly. They will not stop until you kill them, and it's like every 30 or 40 seconds you haven't fought someone, you just get enemies coming after you from somewhere, which makes it really difficult. I mean, you only have so many resources, so much health, and so many breakables in the environment to help you get this health. There are a few NPCs you can save who will give you items that will heal you, but it's not enough. Eventually, I do find all 3 keys and just bust it to the door, but this section takes almost an hour by itself, even harder than the last boss it feels like. Once I do open the door, I fight Belze in his demon form. We actually don't fight him any other time, so this is the only time we get to see him, and he's a giant bug. He is a little difficult, but it takes a lot less time than the last area took in total, which is kind of cool. I beat his ass and he tells us that Azel is waiting for us at the top of the tower and we need to go there. The next hour of gameplay is us going up the tower to get to him, and these are also very difficult areas, although that last one was the one that took the longest. Each of these takes a decent amount of effort to figure out. Some of them have 50 enemies relentlessly chasing you. There are different floors in this tower where you have to fight mini bosses, and sometimes there's 3 or 4 mini bosses in a row. You do get healed in between each of these, and it will send you back to be able to use the shop and save the game, which is very nice. Your health stays the same in between each one, so you'll need to either upgrade your health to get full health bar or find health in the level, because otherwise you'll get screwed and you'll have to fight new enemies with no health. After loads and loads of fighting, because this is the end of the game, we get to fight Azel, and he is pissed. He's like, I'm gonna destroy you before Angra. I don't care about Angra. He's not like a big deal for me. So we fight. Now it does take me a little bit to fight him and figure out what to do, but I've told you this before. Mule kicking him and then heel dropping him. Mule kicking him and heel dropping him. And if the heel drop doesn't work, if you mule kick him and immediately hit circle to stomp on him, it works great. See, the stomp ability is one that people say is not very good. It's a very low tier ability because it does very little damage and enemies can roll out of it. But it's not low tier if you can continuously do it over and over, taking no damage yourself. Then it becomes one of the best abilities in the game because it's so consistent. If you wait for Azel to roll out of your stomp, stand up and go to do a high attack. If you do a mule kick, not only will you dodge the high attack, but you'll stun him and kick him up in the air. He'll land on the ground and you stomp on him. He will do this over and over and over. And at one point I found myself killing him doing just that over and over and over. I almost didn't even have to use God Hand because, well, this is a pretty cheesy way of taking care of him. The thing is that it works. If the game lets me do it, I'm gonna fucking do it. It wasn't like it was that hard to figure out. After I defeat him, well, he turns out to be the catalyst for Angra's resurrection. We were all tricked. The demons put the catalyst inside of him, and now he has the demon hand and he's about to be resurrected as Angra, which it would be a terrible thing. However, he has the foresight to rip his own arm off and throw it to us. Now we have the complete set of God hands, just like the original dude did to defeat Angra so long ago. We now have to fight Angra himself. He's an enormous demon who sits at the edges of the stage, has a few different attacks like a flicking move, he smashes, he shoots fireballs and weird projectiles out, and he is difficult. But you do sometimes get some demons he summons who drop guaranteed health or at least orbs or God hand abilities, so you do have that. And now that you have both of the God hands, if you were able to go to the shop before this and buy the one ability for the roulette wheel that costs 3 orbs, you can now use a very special version of that that does tons of damage. It does still cost 3 orbs, but it is now the strongest ability in the game. Once you use this, he just gets totaled, man. If you can get through this, you win the game. That's it. He is not really that difficult. Honestly, some of the other areas took me a lot longer. He took me about 45 minutes, and that's not really too bad for God Hand, a game that is so complex and difficult, for a last boss. I mean, come on. I truly enjoyed my time playing God Hand, although I'm sure that's obvious with me singing its praises every 5 minutes. I think it's the respect that's given to the player through the very main bits of the game. All of them are fun, and it's just the one mechanic of fighting. They may have wanted to make a complex fighter for the hardcore gamer, but in doing so, they made something that makes the player feel good when they get better at it. They also made the great decision to not tell the player how or when to use an ability, which allows us to create much more unique fighting styles that actually work. Playgrounds may be there for fun, but the safer the playground, the less I learn. And this game has a very dangerous playground, one I can make many mistakes in very quickly. But of course those mistakes resulted in my own fighting style, one that may sometimes feel cheesy. I mean, honestly, some of the victories I got were from spamming the same moves over and over. But what really sets it for me is that I actually enjoyed doing this. It doesn't work everywhere, and it works different for every enemy, so that means I must figure it out. I figured out how to beat the fight no matter the cost, and I had fun doing it. That is the whole point. The effect of this was actually so strong that I was able to ignore anything else I found unappealing, which was the story and the setting. I don't think the story was very interesting. It was very shallow, and we've seen this kind of story many times. Some people are resurrecting some kind of ancient god or a bad guy, and we must stop them. And that's about it. There aren't any twists. Everything that we learn as a player is just what happened before we started the game. It isn't necessarily any kind of twists. It's just, here's more information about what happened. This is mitigated a bit with the fact that the story is fairly humorous and has lots of fun, shocking moments that you don't expect. Although the humor is completely reliant on the fact you don't know what's about to happen. Most of the humor comes from in the moment ridiculous things happening, or even just shocking dialogue. The game is funny, it just won't be funny again. I already know what's going to happen, and I expect it to happen. I mentioned before that the decision to make the game humorous came a little bit into development when they made an E3 trailer. I believe this may be one of the reasons why the story feels so shallow. They decided to layer it on with humor, and that's it. They didn't need anything else, which is fine, honestly. The gameplay is just too fun. This is one of the biggest reasons why I recommend everyone try it, because it is very fun and rewarding to get good at the game. Just don't expect a huge story with depth. It's just a fun, funny experience that no matter how good you are at video games, you can get with a little bit of perseverance and a keen eye. I want to thank everyone who stayed this long in the video so much for being here and listening to me talk about God Hand. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate every single person who comes in here. I also want to say thank you once more to the YouTube and Patreon members. They are the reason we get to play so many cool games. At this point, they are pretty much picking every single game that comes next, and it's all like nostalgic, great games from everyone's childhood, which is, it's just so cool. I don't know what to say. It's just so cool. So thank you so much to everyone. I will be back again soon with Bomberman Kart DX later.